The park was alive with laughter, the chatter of children mingling with the creak of swings and the squeak of sneakers on pavement. Yet on one corner of the playground, everything changed in an instant. Daniel Hayes, a man who carried his burdens like invisible chains, noticed the two little girls first. They had been giggling on the climbing frame, their laughter light and carefree, but the giggles turned to screams when an older boy, brash and careless, startled them by shoving too close. One of the twins lost her footing, and in her panic, both nearly fell. Daniel moved before thought. Years of protecting his son had honed his instincts. He dashed forward, scooping the twins into his arms, their small bodies trembling as they clung to him. Their fear was raw, their tears soaking into his shirt as his steady hand rose like a shield against the boy. "Enough," Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, firm and commanding. His outstretched arm was enough to freeze the boy in his tracks. The twins buried their faces against him, their little fingers gripping tightly. Daniel's heart softened as he whispered low, "You're safe. No one's going to hurt you. I've got you." That was when he heard her voice. "Ava Grace." The urgency in the woman's cry pierced the air, and Daniel turned. His eyes landed on the striking figure rushing toward them, panic etched into every line of her face. She fell to her knees beside the girls, wrapping them into her embrace. For a moment, the world stilled, mother and daughters clinging to one another. Then her gaze lifted, their eyes met, and the past came crashing down on Daniel like a tidal wave. Victoria Cole. The name alone was enough to make his chest tighten. Memories he'd buried clawed their way to the surface, boardrooms filled with promises, contracts signed with excitement, and then betrayal that left him broken and bankrupt. She had been the face of his downfall, the ruthless CEO who walked away while his world crumbled. And now here she was, trembling before him, her arms wrapped around the very children he had just saved. "Daniel," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper, but the recognition was undeniable. His jaw tightened. He wanted to spit bitter words, to demand why fate would mock him like this. But the twin girls clung to him still, innocent and trembling. They didn't deserve his anger, so he stayed silent, his gaze fixed on them instead of her. Victoria's chest rose and fell rapidly. Gratitude and guilt warred inside her, tearing at the steel facade she had spent years perfecting. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice breaking. "You saved them." Daniel didn't answer. He gently released the girls into her arms and turned to walk away. But fate wasn't done with them. The next day, Victoria appeared at the small auto shop where Daniel worked. She looked out of place, her world of polished glass towers and million-dollar deals colliding with the grease-stained garage. She waited as he finished tightening the last bolt on a customer's car, his son Ethan reading quietly in the corner. "Daniel," she said softly when he finally looked at her, "I wanted to thank you properly, and my girls, they won't stop talking about you. They want to see you again." Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, his expression unreadable. "They were kids in trouble. I did what anyone would have done." "No," she said quickly, almost desperately. "Not anyone. You, please, let me at least buy you and your son dinner. My girls would love it." Daniel wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed to keep his distance. She was the woman who had crushed his career, his reputation, his life. But then he looked at Ethan, who had lifted his eyes from the book, curiosity sparking at the mention of the twins. Ethan's childhood had been marked by sacrifice and loneliness. How could Daniel deny him a chance at laughter, at friendship? Reluctantly, he agreed. At Victoria's mansion, Daniel felt like an intruder. The marble floors gleamed, the chandeliers sparkled, and everything smelled of luxury. Ethan's eyes widened with awe, but Daniel's stomach tightened. He didn't belong here. Yet when the children laughed together, Ethan chasing Ava and Grace through the garden, Daniel saw something he hadn't in years: his son's joy. Victoria watched too, her heart softening. She had spent years chasing power, climbing higher and higher, only to realize how empty it all felt. Watching Daniel, how he knelt to tie Ethan's shoe, how he spoke with quiet patience, she saw a kind of strength money could never buy. But the past loomed. One night, as the children slept upstairs, Daniel finally confronted her. His voice was quiet, but every word was edged with pain. "Do you even remember what you did to me? I lost everything. My company, my reputation, my marriage, all gone, and you were at the center of it." Victoria's eyes glistened. I remember more than you think. Daniel, I didn't fight the board when they pulled out. I chose my career over what was right. I ruined you, and I've lived with that guilt every day since." Her confession hung heavy between them. For the first time, Daniel saw not the cold CEO, but a woman stripped bare of her armor, trembling with regret. "I don't want your guilt," he said sharply. "I want my life back, but that's impossible, isn't it?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "No, I can't give you back what I took, but I can try to make it right. Not with money, not with apologies, but with who I am now." Daniel turned away, his chest tight. He wanted to hate her, he wanted to walk away. But Ethan's laughter drifted down from upstairs, mingling with the twins. And somehow, that sound began to chip away at the wall he had built around his heart. The greatest test came weeks later. Ethan fell ill, his breathing shallow, his small body racked with coughs. Daniel rushed him to the hospital, panic clawing at him as he sat by his son's bed, helpless. Victoria came. She didn't hesitate. She brought specialists, paid bills Daniel could never afford, and stayed by his side through sleepless nights. She held his hand when he thought he might lose the boy who was his whole world. In that sterile hospital room, Daniel saw her differently. She wasn't the ruthless CEO anymore. She was a mother, a woman who cared deeply, not just for her own daughters, but for his son too. When Ethan recovered, Daniel found himself standing on unfamiliar ground. The anger was still there, but it was no longer the only thing he felt. There was gratitude, confusion, and something else he dared not name. One evening, as the children caught fireflies in the garden, Daniel stood beside Victoria. The silence between them was softer now, less hostile, more fragile. She turned to him, her voice steady but full of hope. "Daniel, I can't erase the past, but I want a chance to build something new, with you, with our children, not as CEO and victim, just as two people who have been broken and are still standing." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he looked at her, truly looked, and saw not his enemy, but the possibility of healing. Forgiveness didn't come in one night. It came slowly, like the dawn breaking after years of darkness. But as Daniel watched Ethan laughing with Ava and grace, and as Victoria's eyes shone not with ambition, but with love, he realized something. Sometimes, the very person who once destroyed your life is the one life sends back to rebuild it. And together, they began a story not of revenge, but of redemption. A story of second chances, healing, and a love stronger than the pain of the past.